In the Battle of the Silarus in 71 BC, the army of rebellious slaves was defeated by the legions of Mark Crassus, and Spartacus himself died in the battle and his body was not found. There are two versions of the disappearance of Spartacus' body. According to one of them, the commander was chopped to pieces by the legionnaires. According to the other, the bodyguards managed to carry their dead leader from the battlefield. I will not dwell on the study of the first version as implausible, since it is impossible to cut into pieces a body protected by armor. Even if the corpse of Spartacus was disfigured beyond recognition, it could be identified by protective equipment. After the Battle of Trasimene Lake, the Carthaginian commander Hannibal ordered his soldiers to find the body of the deceased Roman consul Gaius Flaminius and, with due honors, to bury his corpse. The body of Flaminius was not found for the simple reason that the Gallic warrior Ducarius from the tribe of the Insubres, who killed the consul, decapitated the corpse of the commander and removed rich armor from him as a trophy. It should be borne in mind that Mark Crassus was in close proximity to Spartacus, who was making his way to him, and after the death of the leader and the retreat of the rebels, he could immediately personally verify the death of the enemy, even examining the body chopped into pieces, but did not. Moreover, Crassus gave the Senate an oath promise to deliver Spartacus to Rome, dead or alive. In many articles devoted to the death of Spartacus, the authors of publications erroneously cite the version that the commander was chopped to pieces as a non-existent quote and excerpts from the narratives of Appian or Plutarch. In fact, the ancient chroniclers did not state anything of the kind. Here is what Appian literally says about the death of Spartacus. Spartacus was wounded in the thigh with a dart. Kneeling down and pushing his shield forward, he fought off the attackers until he fell along with a large number of those around him. His body has not been found. According to Flor, Spartacus himself, fighting in the front row, with amazing courage, died, as befits a great commander. For some reason, many authors of publications conclude that Spartak fought alone, but according to Flor, the rebel leader fought in the forefront, and this suggests that there were associates next to them. Plutarch testifies that Spartacus rushed at Crassus himself, but because of the mass of those who fought and the wounded, he did not manage to get to him. But he killed 2 centurions who entered into battle with him. Thus, the statement that Spartacus was chopped to pieces is the fruit of someone's imagination, and the reference to it as a fundamental document is untenable. I have no doubt that after the death of the commander, the bodyguards of Spartacus carried his body from the battlefield. In every army of ancient times, with a commander during the battle, there was an elite detachment of bodyguards, consisting of the most courageous and devoted to the commander of the warriors. The number of these units in different armies was different, and ranged from 300 hoplites from the Spartan king to 10,000 guards and the so-called immortals from the Persian monarchs. The duties of the bodyguards included ensuring the personal safety of the commander on the battlefield. For the bodyguards, there was an unspoken rule according to which during the battle they had to relentlessly follow their leader and visually not lose sight of him in the chaos and bustle of the battle. If necessary, the bodyguards were required to hand over their sword, spear, shield or horse to the commander. At the same time, the bodyguard himself, for the sake of the safety of his commander, could remain unarmed for a while. In battle formation, the guards were obliged to be at arm's length from the commander going into battle, and when pursuing the enemy or retreating, follow the commander relentlessly and cover him with shields from flying enemy arrows or thrown spears. At the very beginning of the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC between the Thebans and the Lacedaemonians, the Spartan king Cleombrotus was mortally wounded. However, his bodyguards managed to push back the Thebans for a while and carry the king out of the battlefield. One can note the courage and heroism shown by the bodyguards of King Leonidas of Sparta in the Battle of Thermopylae. Then the Lacedaemonians considered it necessary, even in such a hopeless situation for them, to recapture the body of the deceased Leonidas from the Persians 4 times. According to the testimony of the chroniclers, Spartacus died during the offensive of the rebels, making his way to the Roman command in the person of Crassus, surrounded by Praetorian bodyguards. It follows from this that Spartacus was not alone and he was surrounded by numerous associates who tried to turn the tide of battle with the last onslaught on the Roman legions. If Spartacus had died during the stampede of his soldiers, then it would have been much more difficult for his bodyguards to carry the body of the commander from the battlefield. But the rebels, after the death of their leader, withdrew in relative order, and due to the onset of darkness, Crassus did not dare to pursue the enemy. Spartacus's bodyguards most likely consisted of former gladiators who at one time swore an oath and took an oath similar to a military oath, according to which they were considered legally dead. Therefore, it is extremely unlikely that the gladiators, who did not have the right to display cowardice and fear, could leave the body of their commander on the battlefield. In the Battle of Silarus, the Romans de jure defeated the rebels, but in fact the army of Spartacus was not destroyed. According to Livy, the number of dead rebels was 60,000, but this is a clear exaggeration, not even taking into account the data of Velleius Paterculus about the size of the rebel army before the battle of 49,000 people. According to historians, the army of Spartacus lost no more than 1/4 of its personnel in the battle. Comparing the duration of previous battles, and taking into account the number of losses in them, scientists suggest that approximately 12,500 rebels died in the Battle of Silar. The battle was oncoming and both armies collided in a marching march. For this reason, before the battle, the rebels encamped without erecting fortified structures, and did not allow the Romans to do the same. The battle began at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and in January in this area, full twilight sets in by 8 o'clock in the evening. Therefore, the battle lasted no more than 4 hours, and in such a short period of time the rebels could not suffer significant casualties. Orosius writes that Crassus struck down a huge number of slaves. The rest, who wandered about, escaping from this battle, were destroyed by frequent ambushes by many Roman leaders. According to Appian, many of the rebels managed to hide in the mountains, where they fled after the battle. Crassus moved towards them. Divided into 4 parts, they fought back until all were killed, with the exception of 6,000 who were taken prisoner. Another large detachment of rebels, numbering 6,000 people, moved north in an organized manner, trying to leave Italy, and was destroyed by Pompey only in Etruria. Apparently, realizing that they had lost their leader, the rebels left the camp at night, but did not disperse in small groups around the neighborhood, but in large detachments they tried to hide in the mountains. The fact that the army of Spartacus after the battle was divided into 5 large detachments indicates the lack of unity of command in the ranks of the rebels. The retreat took place hastily and precisely at night, since the rebels, for the purpose of revenge, did not have time to destroy 3,000 captured Roman legionnaires in their camp, captured after the recent victories over Arrhae and Scrofa. The Romans had to inspect the battlefield for the discovery of the body of Spartacus as evidence of his death. In Rome in those days there was a formula, present the body. It is possible that the legionnaires examined not only the battlefield, but also looked for the alleged burial place of the leader of the rebels. Companions of Spartacus, due to lack of time, would not have been able to betray the body of their commander to cremation, and made a simple burial at night in a grave pit. They knew that the Romans could abuse the corpse of a defeated enemy, as they did with the bodies of Hasdrubal Barca and Decebalus, whose bodies were decapitated. Ancient history knows examples when even the graves of enemies were defiled, and their ashes or bones were thrown out of the burial for the purpose of revenge, as did the mother of Alexander the Great, Olympias, in relation to the son of Antipater. Therefore, the burial of Spartacus had to be done hastily, secretly, and without distinctive signs at the site of the grave. I mentally went over in my memory the cases of death of the commanders of ancient times, similar to the death of Spartacus, and remembered only one battle at Megalopolis. Then the Spartan king, Agis III, wounded by a spear in the thigh, kneeling, repelled the onslaught of the enemy. The Macedonians did not dare to approach the fearless king of Sparta and threw spears at him from afar. Slavery and Rome are synonymous words, because slaves formed the basis of the life of the Romans. The hardest period in the life of slaves came during the heyday of the Republic. As a result of the inhuman attitude, an uprising of slaves took place, led by Spartacus. This uprising is considered the largest in the history of the slave system. This is where our video ends. Friends, I will be very grateful if you just like, write a comment and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being with us.